The diner smelled faintly of burnt toast and old vinyl seats, like it always did around 7:30 in the morning. Jenny Miller stood behind the counter of Rosie's diner, refilling the sugar dispenser for what felt like the 1,000th time that week. She had worked here for nearly 7 years, long enough to predict not only the weather based on old Mr. Clark's limp but also which regulars would complain about the coffee's bitterness despite ordering it every day. But on a gray Tuesday in October, her routine cracked, just a little. A boy had walked in. No adult. No backpack. Just a boy, maybe 10 or 11 years old, with unruly hair and a jacket 2 sizes too big, the sleeves swallowed his hands. He moved carefully, like someone who knew how to avoid being noticed, and settled into the last booth near the window, the one that usually stayed empty unless the place was packed. Jenny noticed him without really meaning to. She noticed the way he sat close to the wall, his eyes scanning the room but never locking onto anyone. When she came over with a menu, he didn't touch it. Instead, he simply said, "Hot water, please. Not tea. Not coffee. Just hot water." She blinked. "You sure, sweetheart? We've got orange juice. Milk?" He shook his head. "Just hot water." There was a strange calm in his voice, like resignation rehearsed until it sounded natural. Jenny poured the hot water and set it in front of him. He cupped it with both hands like it was gold, steam slipping between his fingers. And that was it. He sat there for 45 minutes and left without another word. No food. No questions. No mess. The next day, he returned. Same booth. Same request. On the third day, Jenny couldn't stand it anymore. She brought over a plate of scrambled eggs and toast, acting like it was a kitchen mix-up. "Cook messed up an order," she said casually, placing the food in front of him. "Hate throwing stuff out." He stared at the plate, then at her. "I didn't order anything." "I know," she said, then walked away before he could say more. The boy ate. Slowly, like he wasn't sure it was real. After that, it became a silent ritual. Every morning, he came in, asked for hot water, and somehow always ended up with something accidentally made wrong or cooked too much. Jenny never asked his name. He never asked hers. But he always finished every bite. She started watching the clock more closely, measuring her mornings by his arrival. Some days he came early. Other days, barely on time. But he came. And she made sure there was always something waiting. Pancakes too browned. Bacon too crispy. Oatmeal left out too long. No one said anything for the first week. But people in small towns noticed things. Whispers grew. A customer, a woman with perfume thick as syrup, leaned over the counter and asked, "Is that your nephew or something?" Jenny smiled tightly. "Just a regular. Doesn't look like he pays." Jenny said nothing. The line cook, Marcus, raised an eyebrow the next morning when she handed him a slip that said, "French toast, slightly burnt," before anyone had even sat down. "You feeding stray kids now?" he muttered, though not unkindly. Jenny shrugged. "You know how it is. Waste not, want not." But something about the boy gnawed at her. Not in a bad way. In a familiar way. She recognized the way he flinched whenever the door slammed too hard. The way he sat facing the entrance, as if ready to run. The way he kept his eyes down when he left, like someone trying not to owe the world anything. She had seen that face before. In mirrors. In memories. Jenny had been that kid once, hungry in ways she couldn't explain, hoping someone might notice without asking why. So she gave. Quietly. Without fanfare. No questions asked. It wasn't charity. It was survival. For both of them. The mornings grew colder, and Jenny found herself layering sweaters over her diner uniform, her breath visible in the little steam clouds that drifted through the open door each time the boy came in. The boy, who never gave a name, who never asked for more than hot water, and who always accepted her small offerings with a fragile gratitude that made Jenny's chest tighten. But kindness, no matter how quiet, can be a dangerous thing in a town like theirs. The kind of town where the past clings to people like moss on stone, where old wounds fester in silence and new ones are born from suspicion. One morning, as Jenny wiped down the counter, she noticed a group of regulars whispering more openly than usual. She caught fragments, playing the charity card, looking for a handout, feeding a freeloader. Their eyes flicked toward the boy's empty booth, then to her, full of judgment masked as concern. Jenny tried to brush it off, but the weight settled on her like a shadow she couldn't outrun. Later that day, the boy came in as usual. She slid a plate toward him, eggs, toast, the works, but his eyes were distant, more wary than before. "Did I do something wrong?" she asked softly, afraid to break the fragile silence. He shook his head but didn't eat. "People talk," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "About you. About me." He finally looked up, eyes glassy. "Why do you care?" It was the question Jenny had asked herself 1,000 times in the mirror when she was that same hungry girl, why anyone would care enough to notice, let alone offer a piece of bread. "I don't know," she admitted. "Maybe because I remember what it's like to be invisible." He swallowed hard, fingers trembling around the glass of hot water. The next day, the rumors became louder, almost confrontational. A regular named Ed, usually quiet and polite, crossed the room with a sneer. "Why do you waste your time on him?" Ed asked loud enough for others to hear. "He's trouble. Probably no family. No home. You're just encouraging him." Jenny's hands clenched around a coffee pot, knuckles white. "Maybe," she said steadily, "maybe what he needs isn't judgment but someone to see him." Ed laughed, a sharp, cruel sound. "Seeing doesn't put food on the table. You're just enabling a bum." The room quieted, the tension hanging like a storm about to break. The boy looked down, shrinking into himself, invisible again. Jenny's throat tightened. She wanted to say something fierce, something that would shut down the judgment, but words felt useless. Instead, she did the only thing she could. She smiled gently at the boy, handed him a napkin, and whispered, "You're safe here." But safety is a fragile thing when the world outside is a storm. That night, Jenny lay awake, heart pounding. Doubt gnawed at her. Was she making things worse? Was her kindness just another form of cruelty, feeding hope that would only be broken? Her mind drifted back to the girl she once was, too proud to ask, too scared to trust. She knew the bitter taste of rejection and the aching hunger for belonging. That knowledge rooted her to the boy, tethered her to the quiet mission of simply being there. The next morning, the boy didn't show. The diner felt emptier, colder. Jenny poured herself a coffee and stared out the window, wondering if she had scared him away with all the noise. Wondering if sometimes kindness isn't enough, or worse, if it's the very thing that drives people further into the shadows. But deep inside, a small flame refused to die. She would wait. She would be there. Even if no one else understood. Because some wounds heal only in silence, with patience, and with a quiet hand reaching out in the dark. Days slipped by with a heavy stillness that weighed on Jenny's shoulders like an unseen burden. The boy's absence was a quiet scream in the diner's daily rhythm, a missing piece that unsettled the worn edges of her routine. The empty booth where he once sat felt hollow, a silent testament to the fragile connection they had barely begun to forge. The town, small and merciless, wasted no time filling the silence with whispers and sideways glances. The same voices that had criticized her kindness now sharpened their tongues, twisting her goodwill into folly, a dangerous naivete. Jenny could almost hear their judgment dripping through the cracked windows, thick with suspicion and quiet scorn. "Probably ran off," Mrs. Calhoun murmured to the woman beside her at the counter, eyes darting toward Jenny. "No good ever comes from feeding drifters." Jenny caught the words, though she tried not to let them pierce the fragile shield around her heart. But the ache was there, sharp and relentless. In the privacy of the kitchen, she fingered the chipped cup she'd saved for him, the one she had filled with hot water so many times. She wondered where he had gone, what ghosts had chased him away. Was it the judgment? The unspoken fear that her kindness wasn't enough to anchor him in a world that refused to be gentle? She remembered the boy's eyes that last morning, full of a strange mix of hope and fear. It was like watching a bird with a broken wing, afraid to fly yet longing for freedom. The whispers grew louder, the town's gossip fermenting into rumors that gnawed at Jenny's resolve. The diner's usual warmth felt colder, like a stage set for silent accusations. "Jenny's lost it," Ed said one afternoon, voice low but harsh enough to carry. "She's meddling where she doesn't belong. If she keeps this up, she'll end up like him, alone, pitted, forgotten." Jenny wanted to scream, to defend the invisible boy who had touched a part of her she barely understood. But the words tangled in her throat, choked by years of silence and shame. Instead, she swallowed her hurt, serving coffee with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The customers watched, their pity a heavier weight than their scorn. Late at night, the diner's quiet was a cruel reminder of the boy's absence. Jenny sat by the window, the soft hum of the streetlights her only company. Her thoughts spiraled through memories she hadn't dared to touch for years, the loneliness of being unseen, the ache of rejection, the desperate hope for connection. Was it foolish to believe that someone broken could be mended by simple acts of kindness? Or was it the only kind of salvation left in a world so quick to judge and slow to understand? She reached for her worn notebook, the one where she scribbled thoughts no one ever read. Her pen hesitated, then moved across the page in shaky strokes. To be seen is to be human. To be unseen is to be lost. Tears blurred the words, but she didn't stop writing. Because in the silence of absence and the sting of whispered judgments, she clung to a fragile truth, the possibility that even in darkness, a single light could hold steady. And so, she waited. Not because she expected anything in return, but because sometimes the purest acts of kindness exist in the spaces where no one else dares to look. The boy returned one chilly afternoon, slipping through the diner's door like a shadow hesitant to claim the light. His eyes, wide and restless, carried a storm of unspoken stories. Jenny's heart tightened as she watched him settle quietly into his old booth, the same spot that had seemed so empty without him. He didn't speak at first, just stared at the chipped cup of coffee she placed before him, fingers trembling as they wrapped around its warmth. Jenny waited, sensing a fragile barrier about to crack, a truth long buried clawing its way to the surface. "I'm sorry I left," he said finally, voice barely more than a breath. "I didn't want you to see." The silence stretched between them, thick with unsaid fears and fragile hopes. "See what?" Jenny asked gently, her own voice soft as if she were afraid to shatter the fragile thread of trust. He swallowed hard, eyes flickering to the window, then back to her. "The truth. About me. About why I'm here." Jenny nodded slowly, urging him without words. "My name is Sam," he began, voice shaky but steadying. "I'm not just some kid with nowhere to go. I used to have a family." The words hit Jenny like a sudden downpour, chilling and unexpected. "But something happened. Something I can't explain, something that broke us apart. I ran away because I thought I was protecting them. Protecting my little sister." Jenny's fingers tightened around the edge of the table, her mind racing to grasp the fragments of a story that had long been hidden in the shadows. "My sister, she's still out there," Sam continued, voice cracking with a mixture of hope and fear. "I've been trying to find her. But I don't know where to start. The people I trusted, they lied. They said she was safe, but I don't believe them anymore." Jenny felt a wave of empathy wash over her, mingling with the guilt she had carried for doubting the boy's place in her life. "Why didn't you say any of this before?" she asked softly. "Because I was afraid," he admitted. "Afraid that if I told anyone, they'd think I was weak. Afraid that they'd see me as broken. Just like I saw myself." Jenny reached across the table, placing a steady hand over his trembling one. "You're not broken. You're just lost. And sometimes, being lost is the first step to being found." Tears welled in Sam's eyes, the dam of years of silence finally giving way. He told her about the night he left, about the lies told by those he trusted most, about the weight of guilt that pressed down on him like a stone. Jenny listened, each word weaving a tapestry of pain and resilience, sorrow and hope. She saw not a stray boy, but a young man fighting a battle invisible to the world, a soul desperate to reclaim what was stolen from him. When he finished, the diner felt different, less a place of judgment, more a sanctuary where broken pieces could begin to heal. Jenny squeezed his hand gently. "We'll find her, Sam. You're not alone anymore." And for the first time in a long time, the fragile light in Sam's eyes burned a little brighter, fueled by the unexpected kindness of a stranger who chose to see him, not as a lost boy, but as a brother, a son, a fighter. In that quiet moment, amidst the hum of the diner and the fading daylight, a new chapter began, one shaped not by fear or misunderstanding, but by the courage to face the truth, together. The morning light filtered softly through the diner's dusty windows, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch into the corners of Jenny's heart. In the weeks since Sam's return and their fragile pact to find his sister, something had shifted, not just in the boy's weary gaze, but in the subtle rhythm of the town itself. Whispers of judgment began to soften, replaced by tentative glances of acknowledgement, as if the community was learning to see beyond the surface. Jenny stood behind the counter, her hands busy wiping down tables, but her mind was elsewhere, caught in the quiet gravity of change. The diner, once a refuge from suspicion, was becoming a place of tentative hope. She caught snippets of conversations from regulars who now spoke of Sam not as a drifter, but as a young man fighting invisible battles with quiet courage. It was Mrs. Calhoun who first broke the fragile barrier. One afternoon, as Jenny cleared plates, the old woman lingered by the counter, her eyes meeting Jenny's with something close to respect. "You've done good, Jenny," she said softly, voice edged with a humility that surprised them both. Not many would have given him a chance. Maybe there's more kindness in this town than I thought." The words felt like a balm, smoothing the raw edges of Jenny's long-held wounds, the scars left by years of silence, by the weight of unspoken kindness misunderstood. She nodded, the corners of her mouth lifting in a quiet, weary smile. Sam's presence in the diner was no longer a secret to be whispered about but a story woven into the fabric of the small town. Local news even caught wind of it, a small article about a young man's journey to find his family, aided by the kindness of a stranger. Recognition came slowly, but it came. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Jenny found herself standing at the center of the town's modest community hall, the air thick with anticipation. The mayor stepped forward, his voice steady but warm, echoing off the wooden walls. "Today, we recognize not just Sam's courage, but the compassion of those who refuse to turn away from those in need," he said, glancing toward Jenny. "In a world too quick to judge, this community has learned a lesson in grace and resilience." Jenny felt a tightening in her chest, the culmination of years of quiet struggles and silent hope. As applause filled the room, she looked over at Sam, whose eyes reflected the same fragile light that had once seemed so dim. It wasn't just about public recognition, it was a quiet victory over the loneliness that had threatened to consume them both. It was a testament to the power of empathy, of seeing and honoring the broken pieces in one another. Later that night, back in the diner, Jenny and Sam sat side by side in the booth, the world outside muted and distant. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small, folded letter, an invitation to a scholarship program for displaced youth, a chance for Sam to rebuild not just his past, but his future. Sam unfolded the paper with trembling hands, his eyes misting over. "You really think I can?" Jenny nodded, her voice steady. "I don't just think it. I know it. You've already taken the hardest step, facing the truth. The rest is waiting for you to claim it." In that quiet moment, the diner wasn't just a place where meals were served, it was a sanctuary where wounds began to heal, where recognition became more than just words, and where honor was found in the courage to care. And as the night deepened, Jenny understood something profound. Sometimes, the greatest victories are not the ones shouted from rooftops, but the ones whispered quietly between two souls who dared to believe in hope. The letter arrived on an ordinary afternoon, slipping silently beneath the diner's weathered door like a ghost from the past. Jenny recognized the handwriting immediately, Adam's, precise and deliberate, a stark contrast to the chaos that had recently unraveled in her life. For a moment, she hesitated, fingers brushing the envelope as though it might burn. Then, with a quiet resolve, she broke the seal and unfolded the paper inside. Adam's words were measured, cautious, but beneath the formal tone lay a tremor of something unresolved, a mixture of regret and guarded hope. He acknowledged the mistakes that had fractured their lives, the silence that had built walls between them. He spoke of watching from afar, of nights spent wrestling with memories too painful to confront directly. His apology was tentative, as if testing the waters of reconciliation without fully committing. Jenny read on, her heart tightening with each line. Adam spoke of Sam, the boy he had never truly known, the son he had failed to protect. He confessed his fears, his own battles with guilt and inadequacy, and his desire to make amends, however fragile and tentative that path might be. There was no grand declaration, no promise to erase the past, just an honest, aching admission that some wounds might never fully heal but deserved the chance to be acknowledged. For hours, Jenny sat alone in the quiet diner, the words settling around her like dust in the fading light. The letter stirred a tempest inside her, a volatile mix of anger, sorrow, and the faintest glimmer of forgiveness. She knew that healing would not be swift, that the scars of betrayal ran deep. Yet, somewhere beneath the layers of pain, a small seed of hope had been planted. Sam came in that evening, the weight of their shared struggles evident in the slump of his shoulders. Jenny handed him the letter, watching as he read with slow, deliberate care. His face was a mirror of conflicted emotions, surprise, confusion, and a hesitant yearning for something he hadn't dared to hope for. "I don't know if I'm ready to believe him," Sam murmured, voice rough with disbelief. "But, maybe it's a start." Jenny nodded, her hand resting gently on his. "It's all any of us can ask for, a start. Sometimes that's enough to begin rebuilding." In the days that followed, the diner became a quiet sanctuary, a place where silence was no longer heavy but filled with the possibility of dialogue and understanding. Jenny and Sam spoke often about the fragile threads that tied their pasts to their futures, about the delicate balance between holding on and letting go. The town, too, began to shift, its eyes less quick to judge, its hearts more willing to forgive. The story of a broken family seeking wholeness became a quiet testament to resilience, a reminder that even fractured lives could find new meaning. Jenny found herself standing at the edge of something uncertain but promising, a future where wounds could be acknowledged without defining her, where love and pain could coexist in the complex dance of human connection. And as the days stretched into weeks, the letter from Adam remained folded carefully in her journal, a symbol not just of past pain, but of the enduring possibility that even the deepest echoes of betrayal might one day give way to understanding and, perhaps, peace.